Serious, what is the most paranormal or unexplainable events you have witnessed? One day I was with my friends and suddenly my head started getting heavy and my vision began to white out at the point where I couldn't see anything at all. I immediately thought that someone could have drugged me and asked my friends to help me walk to a place where I could get some air and sit down. My sight was coming back but I couldn't speak or express anything, couldn't respond or answer what my friends were asking. Somehow I got into a trance and it felt like I was seeing my surroundings from an above me perspective. My friend called my mom and she picked me up. I still couldn't respond until I got home and went to the bathroom. 3 days later my mom received a call from my grandpa and I immediately knew what was going on. He told her that my dad had passed away and was found dead in his bathroom. I live with my mom and my dad used to live in another state. The forensic report showed that he died in that exact date and probably around the moment I've had that episode. I work with donated human tissue. We process stuff like bones, tendons, and skin for transplant. The controlled work area that we process the tissue in definitely has weird things happen in it. Small stuff like repeated or inexplicable equipment failure, tools falling off flat surfaces, and sometimes the tissue itself will react strangely to processing, i.e. a young donor whose tissue will fall apart or exhibit other poor disposition for one reason or another. Sometimes a donor will have so many problems before their processing that it just feels like they did not want their former body parts to be transplanted. I have definitely got strange vibes while working. I'm not saying that they are knowingly or purposefully haunting us, but there is an energy that is hard to deny. My stepdad found our puppy Eddie on the side of the road. Someone had thrown him out of a moving car, and he had broken legs, broken teeth, a swollen and closed eye, and was severely dehydrated. My stepdad took him to the vet and paid quite a bit of money for surgeries to get Eddie fixed up. He got attached to the doggo, so we ended up adopting him. After that, even though he was the family dog, he was best buds with my stepdad. Anywhere my stepdad was around the house, you could find Ed tagging along. Eddie and I grew up together. He died while I was in college, and my parents buried him in a pet cemetery. Since it was sort of sudden and I was far away, I didn't get to say goodbye. A few months after that, I had a dream where Eddie comes and find me. His hair is matted and dirty, and his flesh looks kind of rotted, but he's wagging his tail and seems really happy to see me again. Eddie starts leading me down a hazy path, and the farther we go, the faster his tail wags. Finally, we get to this giant wall of mist that extends across the entire horizon and rises higher than I can see. Eddie gets real close to it before trotting back to me. He licks my hand, gives me a couple of nose boops and whines a little. Then he turns around again and starts to do that happy dog prance toward the wall until he finally passes through it. I can sort of see his outline jumping up and down excitedly next to a human-shaped figure. I jog after Eddie and reach my hand out to touch the wall, hoping I'll be able to pass through it, too. That's when my cell phone rings in real life, waking me up. When I answer it, my mom is on the other end crying. My stepdad had just died of a heart attack. I was a kid, maybe 10 years old. I came inside in the evening after playing outside in the backyard. I stopped by the exterior door to take my shoes off and just happened to notice that the basement door across the room was closed and deadbolted. It was an old door that didn't stay totally closed unless deadbolted. I look down to untie one of my shoes and I hear a loud bang and look up to see the basement door wide open. I noped the fuck out of there with my shoes still on. My parents were in the other room and didn't hear a thing. I went back later and the door/lock were totally undamaged. I have absolutely no idea what caused it and can't really come up with any rational explanation. I was pretty afraid of going in the basement for a while. On the day my father died I was alone in the apartment we lived in. While everyone was out mourning at my uncle's, I stayed home because I didn't want people to stare at me sobbing. Anyways, I'm in the living room and I hear footsteps in my mother's room that has a balcony. I straight up hear the balcony door open, so now I'm like sobbing and shouting asking who's there. I go check it out and there's no one there except a strong smell of tobacco in the room. My father used to smoke on the balcony. Never told anyone about it and just kept it for myself. Later learned my mother got blamed for my dad's death. Even though they loved each other since they were teens and my dad was simply a victim of cancer, and a massive brawl broke out, so I just thought of it as my dad coming home because he couldn't be bothered to hear people arguing. When I was in high school, my younger brother and I shared a bedroom. His bed was on one side of the room and mine was on the other. My brother was an avid sleepwalker and would also talk in his sleep all of the time. Sharing a bedroom with him, it was unsettling at first, but I eventually got used to it. One night, it's about 3 a.m. and I suddenly wake up from a deep sleep, instantly alert. I had this urge to look towards my brother's bed. I felt a presence in the room. When I turned my head, I saw a tall, skinny shadow/human-like figure and it was reaching its hand down towards my sleeping brother's face. Its hand got maybe an inch away before its head jerked to the side and looked at me staring at it, frozen. The shadow then faded and moved up into the air, vanishing through the ceiling. Immediately, my brother shot up out of his bed, stood, and walked to the light switch. He turned it on and looked at me. In a very calm and solemn voice, he says, "Did you feel it? Did you feel the hand?" He then turned off the light and went back to his bed. I hid under my covers the rest of the night. My brother doesn't remember any of it. I have a couple. The first one was when my ex died. I had a 4-month-old daughter with him at the time, but we didn't live together. The night he died, I heard someone walking into the bedroom where my daughter was and very clearly heard his voice talking to her. I called out, thinking he may have came in through the back, but no one answered. I found out the next day he died sometime during the night, probably around the time I heard the voice. The second one happened at the last place I lived. It's nothing terribly spooky, but I rented a townhouse and figured out that in my daughter's room there was attic access. I was stoked because that meant I could probably store my Christmas decorations up there. I get a kitchen chair to open it up and I couldn't. Not physically. Physically it was easy to open. Something mental stopped me from doing it. I had a huge fear. So I left it alone. Sometimes I'd get really eerie feelings, but I chalked it up to it being the first place I've lived in alone in a while, 2 years at that point, but I don't get those feelings in my new apartment at all. I found out from my neighbor not too long after the attic incident that the guy who lived there before me was a raging alcoholic and hung himself in the house. In my daughter's room. The one with the attic access. My daughter's school prom. We had brought a beautiful gown and shoes and they were hanging safely in her wardrobe. The evening of the prom she went upstairs to get ready and shouts down to me, "Thanks for getting everything ready for me, Mom and Quat." Well, I hadn't been in her room at all. When I went up to see what she was talking about, I found her dress laying on the bed, her shoes next to her dresser and perfume on her dresser. I didn't say anything so she wouldn't freak out, but I spooked me. After that there were other instances like a certain perfume appearing on her dresser, wardrobe doors closing by themselves, etc. After a while we got used to it and would just say thank you when anything happened. Have one. It must have been some kind of hallucination, but it really scared me. I was sitting in my bed watching YouTube for a couple hours. I got up and reached forward to set something on my nightstand or whatever. I had this strange undescribable feeling that I hadn't actually moved from where I was sitting at all. I quickly turned around and looked at where I was sitting seconds before, and there I was, still sitting there. I was outside my body. I could see the shocked, horrified expression come to my face at such a strange sight. I quickly sat back down right in the same spot and nothing strange happened again. A few years ago, about a year after we moved into our house, my mom and I were home alone with our dog. I was in one bedroom and my mom was in another right across the hall. I heard my dog's toy squeaking down at the end of the hall, so I figured she was playing with it. No big deal. Then my dog came running into the bedroom, without a toy, but the squeaking continued. My dog was running around like crazy, in and out of the bedrooms as if she was trying to figure out where the squeaking was coming from. I figured my mom was teasing her, trying to get her to play. It continued for a few minutes and my dog was getting crazier and crazier until my mom called across the hall for me to stop squeaking the damn toy. "You're making the dog crazy." And quat. So I stepped into the hallway and said, "I don't have the toy, I thought you were squeaking it." And quat. At this point the squeaking had stopped, and we were both freaked out, standing right next to each other with the dog sitting between us. We looked down the hallway and the toy was sitting there, nothing touching it. Suddenly it started squeaking like crazy, as if someone were jumping up and down on it. The hair on the back of my neck stood straight up and I was frozen in place. My mom almost started crying. The energy was just so weird, I can't even explain it. Turns out the previous owners had a dog that died in the house, and they told my parents that the ghost of the dog comes around from time to time. Now, I've always been iffy about the existence of ghosts, but I swear that ghost dog was playing with my dog's toy. I'll bring out this story again. It happened to me 7 years ago and I can't figure it out, but I lost an hour of time in what felt to me like minutes. At the time I was working from home after a serious illness diagnosis. I had settled into a routine, up at 7 a.m. and do house stuff and shower, then at 8 a.m. start prepping my work and laying out my day. Phone calls and emails from 8 to 9. This is all I remember. It was 7:55 and I brewed a cup of Keurig coffee on my kitchen located on the main floor of my house. I went upstairs to my office and turned on my computer to settle in and realized I forgot the coffee in the kitchen. I went back downstairs and got the coffee as soon as I realized I forgot it. Couldn't have been more than the time it took Windows to boot up, but I took a sip and the coffee was cold. Not warm, but actually cold. I thought my Keurig was broke, but I looked at the clock and it said 9:14. So whereas I expected it to be 8:05 max, somehow an hour and 10 minutes passed without explanation. It was very bothersome. I have no idea where that hour went. I have never had any blackout before or since, no seizures, and the meds I was on shouldn't have caused a lapse like that. I don't think I fell asleep because I distinctly remember typing my password and saying out loud, "Shit, I forgot the coffee," and quat. It kinda left me uneasy a bit. Nothing like it ever happened to me before or since. Damn it, I'm just about to go to sleep and I do not want to type this story. But it's too good to pass. It happened to 4 different people, in 2 separate occasions. The first one was 8 years ago. I had a roommate who we'll call Karen. I worked in a store not far from our apartment. She texts me while I'm at work, and said, "Hey, can you please open the door? I don't have my keys. And quat. I answered, "Sorry Karen, the first can't. I'm at work." And quat. Her, I can hear your voice in the apartment. And quat. I was super confused, so I sent her a selfie, snap of me at work, with a confused look. She could hear me talking. The apartment had paper walls so she could actually make out what I was saying. A few minutes later her boyfriend arrived, he heard me too, and as soon as they put the key in the door, the voice stopped. Few weeks later, my then best friend and I come back from a bar, or a concert, I don't remember which. We enter my apartment building, and I hear Karen's voice through the door. She had a very loud voice. I look at my friend and on like, "Huh, looks like Karen's home." And quat. I put the key in the door, voice stopped. I get inside, there's no one there. My best friend had heard Karen too, mind you, clear as day, so there's no way I could have imagined it. When I was 13, I woke up in the middle of the night to a strange man's voice. I couldn't understand what he was saying because he was talking really fast, but at one point I heard it say my brother's name and then it started laughing maniacally. My dad heard it too and came running into my room and turned the lights on. No one was there. Absolutely no explanation. Another time, I woke up in the middle of the night and I heard what sounded like a cult gathering right outside my window. It was like 3 a.m. and I could just very clearly hear a group of people singing/chanting while a baby wailed. After about 10 to 20 minutes, it suddenly stopped. I work in a prison. Before my job in the jail changed, I used to have about 1.5 hours of downtime before it was time to punch out. My sergeant at the time asked if I would cover the 11 p.m. count on one of the blocks. He didn't care what I did before or after, just do the count. No prob. I'm sitting at our Times Square area. One hallway leads to 4 blocks, and another hallway leads to the other 4. I'm sitting in front of one of those hallways. I hear someone walking towards me from behind. But I realize I don't hear keys. We all have keys, except inmates. I turn around, no one there. I think, okay, maybe I just imagined it. Guy sitting in the area with me asks who it was. I guess I didn't imagine it. Alright then. 11 p.m. comes. I go to the block. No one is letting me in. WTF. I go back to the Times Square area to call and let the officer know not to panic. I'm coming, I just can't get in. As I'm on the phone, I feel someone behind me and they lean into my ear and whisper forcefully, "What are you doing?" And quat. I wave my hand back to signal to them to stop. I hang up and turn to yell at who it was. No one is there. No one is in any hallway. I'm all alone.